how do we redraw, and this is a question for all three of you, how do we redraw the separation between police and politicians so that police are enforcing laws and not policies?
That's a really good
need
question.
some better politicians in there.
Well, we're working on that, but that's a hard road.
Yeah, that's a little way ahead.
Oh,
But look,
goodness.
it can come down to every individual officer, and you've got to ask them, what is the line you draw in the sand personally where you say no further? Bodily autonomy, basic human rights that are enshrined under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, Nuremberg Code, even the Biosecurity Act, our federal legislation, has safeguards in that are just being ignored under these public health orders.
Even the
so what's the
Hippocratic
line?
Oath.
Yeah, exactly. What's the line an officer draws in the sand and says, I'm not going to cross that line?
So you reckon it comes down to individual courage of the officers? There isn't really necessarily something that could be done at a higher level to really reinforce that separation between the two?
It's difficult. I think the starting point is to actually challenge our fellow police officers around the country to first up consider their use of force, consider their discretion, tactical disengagement. And as I've said previously, there's a mindset with a lot of officers that we will win the interaction at any cost. And that is just a ridiculous mindset to carry forward over a very minor offence. There has to be a correlation between the use of force you're using and what the offence is.
Yeah. Okay. Craig, you were going to jump in a second ago?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about there is, to make sure that there is a clear separation between the government and the police force. Because you don't want to ever have a situation where, the police force, and it's a community police force. We're not a military police force. We're a community police force. We do this for a job. And at the end of the day, we take off our uniform, we put on our clothes, and we go back home, and we're part of the community just like everybody else. Yeah. And the police need to remember that. And so in my personal opinion, I don't think that the chief of police should be a political appointee. I think it should be completely independent of the government. It should be somebody from within the police force. And perhaps we even go down the path of what they do in the US and vote these people in and have them accountable to the people, so that if they're not doing a job in accordance with people's expectations, they can be voted out.
Well, this is the interesting thing. You watch something like Blue Bloods, which is a TV show that my wife loves. And one of the strong sort of subplots of this entire series is the police commissioner butting heads with the mayor and constantly having to pull the mayor back into line and say, hey, we don't do that around here. This, we're not here for you. We're here to enforce the law equally for everybody. And I feel like there's some tough conversations that aren't being had in the higher echelon, certainly in Victoria. Those conversations aren't happening.
Well, these gentlemen will have seen, because they've looked at they've done some research themselves, obviously, and they will have seen what's going on around the world. And certainly in parts of America, where a sheriff's department will refuse to enforce any of the mandates, will refuse to enforce any of the health recommendations and mask mandates, because they are independent of the government. They're voted into a position and they can act with complete independence. And that's the sort of thing that I would love to see. I would love to see the police, based on evidence, say to the government, what you're doing is not correct. And it's not helping the citizens in any way, shape or form, and we'll have no part of it. If the police had have done that, we would have gained generations. We would have earned generations of good faith out of the citizens of this state, and would have had a much more effective police force as a result.
Yeah, 100%.